You mentioned B12 earlier on. That's the only supplement you take,
Yep.
and I know you've done quite a bit of in-depth research into B12.
Mhm.
So can you give us an overview on B12 and that, because like a lot, I know like a lot of people think that it's a low B12 is a vegan issue where it's more of a modern world issue. I know. So can you just give us a bit of an overview on that and why you take B12?
Well, my research isn't research as such; it's just personal interest. But I've read the clinical research books. I've read the textbooks. I've gone to the libraries. I've talked to the doctors and the physicians and the Tour de France team physicians.
Hmm.
B12 deficiency can occur in anybody, regardless of diet. There's not a single deficiency or disease that only vegans get.
Sure.
But people think there is. What about calcium? What about protein? What about B12? It's like only a vegan can have a problem with B12. It's not true at all.
Hmm.
In fact, all my cycling friends I race with, they all do B12 supplements. How do I know this? I ask them. I ask everyone. I talk to people every day, from Lance Armstrong to Joe Blow on the corner. I talk to everyone asking questions. And all the guys I'm racing with, training with, they all do a B12 supplement, either injection form, sublingual, or a little pill.
Yeah.
So it's B12 deficiency is common. Now, there's a Tufts University study recently that said over 39% of the US has low serum B12.
Yep.
We also know that in Japan, the minimum cutoff for B12 is 550, and in the US it's about 180, and that's the same in Australia.
Right.
So you can test 220 in Australia or the US. Doctor's like, yep, no worries, mate, all fine.
Hmm.
But you can have dangerously low B12 serum levels, and you're going to go undiagnosed. But if you're in Japan and your levels are 220, the doctor's going to go, man, you need to do injections now.
Hmm.
They're not going to say eat some steak. They're going to go, no, you need injections. And Japan has the lowest rate of dementia in the world, in the Western nations.
Yep.
So even my raw meat eating friends, 100% of them have B12 deficiency. How do I know this? Because we get tested. They show me their tests.
Hmm.
And one of them now, he does B12 injections. Actually, two of them now do B12 injections, and their levels went right up. So eating raw meat doesn't raise your B12 levels. And someone might go, yeah, I raised my levels 20 points or 30 points. It's like, that doesn't mean anything. Like, your levels always go up and down a few points, but
Yeah.
we're talking from 180 to over 1,000. That's a raise in B12.
Yeah.
Going up to 300 is nothing, really, in my opinion. And there's a good book to read called Could It Be B12
Hmm.
by Sally Patchlock. Could
Okay.
it be B12?
Yep.
So I did a lot of testing, and it turns out I lack intrinsic factor.
Hmm.
So I was supplementing all my life. In Australia, we inject the cows with B12. We inject the sheep with B12, and we spray B12 in the cereal. So I was always eating those foods, and I was supplementing that way. And when I went raw, I had no supplements whatsoever. And I got tested for the first time in my life, B12, and I was low. I'm
Yeah.
thinking, interesting. Everyone around me said, oh, that's because your diet. And it's like, well, what I've done is I've taken the supplements out, and now my body's not absorbing the B12 that my body produces,
Hmm.
because every human body produces B12. But a lot of people have absorption issues. So I'm not absorbing the B12, my levels drop down. I'm like, oh, what can I do here? I can just continually go down and see what happens, or I can start supplementing like I used to.
Yeah.
So I started supplementing again. And
Did
my
you get any
levels,
symptoms?
had no symptoms at all. I was still in peak fitness. But I wanted to... It's a bit like a car, if the oil light's flashing, but the car's still going good, let's just get the oil. Let's just stop and fix the oil.
Yeah.
That's my philosophy. And I looked at the cons of B12 injections. There's hardly anything. There might be a reaction to the vinegar in the solution or whatever.
Yeah.
And I looked at the cons of having a B12 deficiency, and they weren't pretty. They weren't pretty. And people still today say, Harley, you should just eat some raw eggs, or eat some meat. And it's like, they don't understand the whole issue there. They don't understand that B12 deficiency occurs in meat eaters as well.
Yeah.
That if B12 deficiency was just a vegan thing, it would only be in vegans. Now, I'm going to have to tell this the rest of my life, because people are in this mindset of like, if you get a B12 problem, it's because you're a vegan. But it's not that case at all. But that's just, when people say that, they just have like a low level understanding of human physiology and nutrition.
Yeah.
But that's cool. We're going to learn somewhere.
Yeah. Great.
So anybody can have a B12 issue.
Okay. And what are the effects of getting your B12 levels jacked up? How does that affect your performance in sport or your performance in life? Did you notice a difference?
I didn't notice any difference, but I know a lot of people notice weight loss. They find it easier to get more lean. A lot of women find that they just metabolize things a lot better, because we know B12 is used in carbohydrate, fat, and protein metabolism, and a lot of weight loss clinics in the US use B12 injections.
Yeah.
A lot of bodybuilders use B12 injections for. This is a funny one. Bodybuilders eat more meat than anybody on the planet, yet they do more B12 injections than anybody on the planet.
Interesting.
I've got a friend. He does B12 injections 4 times a week, 5 times a week, and he eats 1 kilo of steak a day.
Wow.
And and he actually showed me how to do B12 injections. 1 kilo. Yeah, he's like 110 kilos guy.
Yeah.
And he's young. He's only like my age, 34, but you can see his health's going to be going downhill soon. But anyway, so I didn't notice any differences, but a lot of people report better weight loss, better sleep, better mood.
Yeah.
I know I talked with the doctor in Byron Bay, Australia, and he said he had a patient who was a meat eater, and because he was a cycling friend of mine, he was locked up in a mental ward, and this doctor got his B12 levels tested, and he was like, almost non-diagnosed, non-detectable, and he gave him B12 injection. He said within 24 hours, it was like someone flipped a switch, and so there's a lot of stuff on the net and in the clinical publishing, medical stuff that give before and after stats. But me, I didn't notice anything.
Right.
A lot of people notice. A lot of people notice weight loss. That's probably the biggest one.
Because you mentioned there that all the athletes that you're competing with, they're all on B12 shots. So I thought maybe it increases sports performance or something. No.
Well, if you're running low, it's going to increase your performance because you're not going to produce enough hemoglobin.
Right. Or
your hematocrit's going to be deficient, or you're going to have anemia symptoms. So if you're running low on B12, like really low, like you're getting symptoms, physical symptoms, and your performance is down, and you do B12 injections, get your levels up, then yeah, it's going to be a benefit. Personally, I didn't notice any benefit at all.
Okay.
I noticed benefit on paper,
yeah,
but not on the bike. Didn't notice any difference.